How would you feel about a law that requires people over the age of 70 to pass a specialized driving test in order to continue driving? Sorry if this ends up being long, but it's angered me for quite some time. About 10 years ago, my mother at age 69 had a massive stroke. They didn't expect her to live, let alone come out of it mostly all right. Which she did, except for some vision loss in her left eye. Not total, just peripheral, so she can only see perfectly straight out of that eye. So after about a year recovering from the stroke and the ensuing infection from the surgery that ended up being worse than the stroke itself, she decides she wants to go get tested to see if she can retain her driver's license. Required by law in my province of Canada. My father was not well either, as he had a long-term terminal illness, so I pack them both up in my truck and take them to the DMV. Me and my father happily assuming there is no f-king way in hell she will pass. Aside from her vision issues, the amazingly quick-witted and swift woman I grew up with was very unsure of herself at all times and took forever to make the smallest decisions. It broke my heart, and it didn't even occur to me to be scared that she would get her license back. Well, she did, passed with flying colors, the DMV guy said. As a SAR, search and rescue, tech, the idea of taking him up in the helicopter and throwing him out without a rope occurred to me. 1 week later, accident number 1. TB net a poor lady as she was coming out of the grocery store. Not much damage and no injuries, thankfully. Mother still refused to admit she wasn't fit to drive. Month later, accident 2. She panics on a multi-lane cross-city road and ends up on the raised median and rips the entire exhaust system off her car. Still won't admit any issues. At this point I'm amazed I didn't have ulcers. Shortly after accident 2, my father passed away. I did everything up to and including begging to get her to give up the license. She wouldn't do it, and for the next few months I spent every day with a knot in my stomach until I spoke to her around 6 p.m. every night. Once she was home from running around, then around 1 p.m. I get a call from her cell phone, this phone I bought her that she mostly ignored except to charge it. I couldn't understand a word she said, she was so upset on the phone. I managed to get her general location out of her and hopped in a car and more than exceeded the speed limit getting down there. Upon arriving there are 2 ambulances, shoes in front of her car, and it's up on the curb. She's sitting on the curb next to it bawling her eyes out, and I'm terrified she's killed someone. Turns out a man and his son were walking out of the soccer pitch next to the road, began to cross on the crosswalk, and she didn't see them. She thankfully only struck the father, and aside from being banged up he wasn't super seriously injured. Because of my job I knew most of the police officers in the city, so one of them offered to follow me back to her house so she could take me back down to get her car. By the time I had done so and got back to her condo, she had stopped crying. Threw me the extra set of keys to the car she had and told me to get rid of the car. She even tried to get the DMV worker that passed her fired after that. She immediately realized she shouldn't have ever gotten it back. She was actually terrified that she had been driving like that. Years later she still comments about how she never even saw the man and his son and how she could have killed one or both of them. I have all the respect in the world for seniors. My mother was one of the first women CEOs in this province and was a hellcat in her day. I learned a lot from her. But I also learned to accept limitations. If you are older reading this post, if you think for even a second that you could maybe not be the safest person to be on the road, talk to and listen to your loved ones. It's horrible to give up that freedom. It would be more horrible for you to kill some innocent person because you are too proud to give it up. Edit, thanks for the gold, mysterious stranger. I think older drivers definitely need to be retested and have restrictions put on their license as to driving at night, driving only within certain distances of the home, driving above certain speeds, etc. up to and including revocation if found to be impaired to significant degree. And I'm staring down 70 myself. In Japan, they have special decals that identify new drivers and the elderly, which I think is a good thing. If you see someone with an elderly tag, you might not assume that driver sees everything you do or reacts as quickly as you do. I had trouble getting my dad to quit driving because I knew he couldn't see. He couldn't tell me from my daughter from across the room. I called the DMV for suggestions and they sent him a letter to come in for a vision test. He passed. He was in his 90s with cataracts and dementia. We had a lot of rancor over this issue and he ended up living with my brother whom he would actually listen to. And he quit driving. I was 17 when I took the vision test for my license. The guy doing the vision test had me look into a little box and asked me which of these signs is farthest away. I have no vision issues of any kind, and great depth perception, but for the life of me I couldn't tell. I answered him honestly, if sarcastically, and said, I don't know, they're all about 10 inches away in a wooden box. All he said was ooh, and passed me. He probably just thought I was some a-hole kid, but he didn't do anything to follow up me saying, very clearly, that I couldn't tell. I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' retirement community's pool. One particular shocker was overhearing a woman say she was driving around and no longer taking her anti-seizure medication. Several residents sold their cars and bought golf carts and could get around easily that way. Edit to add, my grandmother ended up bumping into several buildings and another car before deciding to sell her car. But she won't give up her license, just in case she decided to take a taxi to a dealership that would gladly sell her a car. Yeah, my grandfather gave up his license he was around 70 years old. He said he was driving home one day, looked around and realized he had no idea where he was. He parked his car, called my mom to come pick him up and stopped driving then and there. The problem is the US is terrible for people without a car. Rural areas have awful transit options and everything is spread so far apart. Car-oriented design has ruined American cities. I work with the olds for a living. The frequency that they casually drop my doctor told me I can't drive anymore, coupled with the fact that they drove to my office, is terrifying. One woman could barely walk, who also told me she couldn't see while I was demonstrating something to her. Got in her car and drove away after her appointment. There's another man who constantly tells us he donated his car to someone who needed it but regrets it because he has to take the bus everywhere. The son told us they literally had to take it away because he kept driving on sidewalks and running lights, and he refused to stop driving after his license was suspended for drunk driving. I watched another woman just YOLO pull away from the curb as she was leaving, nearly causing a multi-car pileup. One woman came in because she had head trauma from an accident she caused. She drove herself. Oh. I've also had my bumper smashed in by a patient just trying to park in the spot next to me. I get a full dose of their cognitive skills in my office. There are many times I'm pleasantly surprised at how sharp they still are. But more often than not I'm afraid for those who are sharing the road with them on their way home. While I agree they do deserve the dignity of having the same rights as everyone else, I do not believe that right should supersede the safety of literally anyone else on the road with them. Please. My grandma is practically blind and went to take her driving vision test to renew her license. She failed, but the lady at the DMV felt bad, so she had her take it again and gave her hints so she could pass it. So now my practically blind grandma is out on the road still. It's for their safety as much as anyone else's. I'm so mad that the lady at the DMV was so irresponsible as to let her keep driving. I know of someone, north of 80 years old, who had horrible cataracts, had refused to visit an optometrist for years, and was not fit to drive. They avoided eye examinations because they knew they would have their license taken. When they finally went to get a cataract surgery scheduled, their doctor told them that if they agreed not to drive until after the surgery and after their eyes healed, they would not have their license taken. Legally, they can drive. And plan to. But holy FCK, they should not be anywhere near a road. I'm all for retesting, because it would catch SHT like that.